where I'm at. It's 6 where you're at, right, Cody?
Yep.
9 for Gus.
Yes, sir.
Gus gets to sleep in.
Tuesday. That's
All
my
right. All right. Sounds good. I figured it'd be better than if we all tried to intro at the same time without planning it. So welcome back, everybody. It is Tuesday. I had a video that it went off, and it was about retirement and being able to retire in my 20s. And that got more views than I've ever gotten before. So I figured, what if we just talk about the math behind retirement? I saw a little post on, doom scrolling online, and it said, what would you rather have, 10 grand a month or retire at 40? I'm like, I feel like people don't understand how to retire. What do you guys think about that? Like, have you seen this where people just literally don't understand what it takes to retire? Because I see that again and again where people are like, if I could just retire at 40, and they don't even know how to describe what that would mean.
I guess we have to define what's retired, because I think some people may have different opinions on what being retired is exactly. So with you asking that question, Cody, what do you consider retiring?
The ability to not have to go to a job. That's my take. I mean, when I hear the conventional person saying they want to retire, it's like, I want to not have to work at the age of 65 or 63 or 55 if you're lucky. And so when I see those posts online where it's like, would you rather have 10 grand a month forever or be able to retire at 40? It's like, I feel like people just don't even know what it takes to retire. Because there were people picking the retire at 40 over the 10 grand a month passive.
Which is funny because 10 grand a month is probably more than a lot of people make too. Like when you think about a teacher or, even a professor at a community college or, like a lot of city employees where I live, like if you look at the public salaries, most people actually don't even make $10,000 a month. So that would be better than retirement for a lot of people.
So what's your guys' take on that? What do you think it means to retire? Because there's a lot of ambiguity online.
So that's why I wanted to ask you first, since you were asking the question, what exactly is it to retire? What I would go into, and what I would ask you, again, another clarifying question, would you say working in your business, is that still working? Or would you say, because I'm not working a 9 to 5, I'm retired from that, but I'm working in my business? I just want clarification on that before I answer.
I'd say for retirement, being able to not have to work. Yeah, you get to. You don't have to. So like in my shoes, I don't have to go to a job, but if I build a universe where I have to go to properties every single day and take phone calls at 9 p.m., I'm not retired, right? Because if I stop working, so does the business.
Okay. So I get where you're coming from, what retirement means. All right. So with that being said, I don't think a lot of people know. I think what they think retirement is in the general public, maybe not so much real estate, is being 60, 65, 70, and you're receiving your, whatever check, your retirement checks and things along those lines. I think that's what the general overall thinking is. So when someone hears that question, $10,000 or retire at 40, they're already trained in their mind what retirement looks like. And they're thinking, if I could retire at 40 instead of 65 and receive those benefits, I'd much rather do that, because that's pushing things up 25 years. Now that's just for the overall mind. Now, when we're talking about $10,000, how many responsible adults spend over $10,000 a month? Maybe, anyone that I think is responsible, I don't think they're spending that much money. I think, they're living well within their means, and even maybe a little higher than their means, but it's still at a particular point where they still can save, they're still managing, and things along those lines. Um, for me, what retirement looks like is maybe I'm speaking to my property manager once or twice a month. I see the money coming in my account, and I'm really focused maybe at that time. And it could be right now, but I think I would be calling it too early right now to retire. So I'm not retired at the age I'm at. I think within 5 years, even less. I think I could get there. But for me, it's still an uphill battle to get there because I don't think I'm there yet because my business is still in the survival mode. So if I say, yeah, I'm retiring next year, I'll be lying because I'm still on year 7 of my real estate next year will be 7 years. I'll be in my real estate portfolio. That's too early to say I'm retired. Where I really see when I'm retired after 10, 12, 15 years, that's what I think you're in that sweet spot. I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm kind of like talking on all different
no,
levels.
this is good. You got to define terms before people can understand terms, right? So, Emily, do you want to go, and then we can jump into the actual numbers and math and business behind it?
I think your definition, Cody, is good, that you don't have to be involved. I think some people, and we've all, I think, had this conversation in the past. I know me and Gus have with different people, is not necessarily like we don't necessarily want to stop because we're enjoying what we're doing, but defining it as the ability to stop. So maybe you're at a point where the money is in a position where you could not move forward if you chose not to, but you still are, because people are like, oh, I thought you were retired, but then you're still actively doing stuff. The ability to say, okay, I'm done, or I'm stepping away. So just to define that for people, but you're still being involved because you choose to. I think that's a good definition. You want to go to work, you don't have to.
So to actually be able to retire, what is the math that people should be doing?
Their expenses and spending money that would have them comfortable, I think, for a month. So if your expenses are $3,000, I think that's a good starting point. And maybe to put a 20% buffer on top of that, just in case as time increases with expenses, you're also accounting for that. And then whatever you see as far as spending money, having that, but multiplying it by 20%. So you're also getting ahead of that. I think for everyone it's a different amount, would be my opinion.
So you're saying if someone lives on $5,000 a month, they should get to a monthly income, whether they work or not, of $6,000 a month? 20% more?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it also depends do they have reserves? Do they have money in the account? Because that will play an important part to it also. But as far as those numbers, if they do have reserves, I don't see it as bad, as in my own opinion.
I think you got to look at where that money's coming from too. You know, for us, for real estate, it might be a little bit different because we, for the most part, assume those assets are going to increase in value. But I think that if this was based on stock, and there's swings in real estate too. But I've known people that were ready to retire, or they thought they were, and then it was like right around that 2008 period where everything went down, and they were going to have to start liquidating and selling at a low. And they're like, if we sell at this low, we're realizing this loss versus if we can wait it out. So they actually deferred their retirement. So I think it depends on where that income flow is coming from too. Because if it's from stocks or even real estate, you might want to understand there might be a downswing where rents might have to go down. So you might want to be, like Gus said, a certain amount higher. So when those go down, you can absorb that.
For sure. One thing that I like to do is I want to look at my annual cash flow goal. So if, let's say, someone wants $100,000 a year for retirement, whatever it may be, for how much money do I need to be able to survive and do what I want to do when I don't have to work? And I usually just take that number and divide it by 5%. That's my thought. It's like if I can get a 5% return on a dividend, no matter what it is, I choose real estate, but not everybody has to. Then that'll give me my number. So, for 100 grand, you need $2 million invested. For 200 grand, you need $4 million invested. And that doesn't have to be your own cash, but now you have to build a plan to get assets to get there. And so that's what I've seen a lot of people do here. And at least in Central Washington, they buy stuff that'll accumulate to that number that could produce a 5% return. And then they just let the tenants pay it off. And once they're there, they're done. And it adjusts for inflation, which is nice.
And are you meaning people that are retired, Cody? That's what
Yeah.
you see them doing?
That's what I see a lot of people that are retired doing. Yeah. So go ahead.
Right. I think I'm on delay again. But are they involved in their business at all?
Nope. Some are just completely hands off. And so some of them just have property management companies managing their stuff. And maybe that's why they get a 5% return instead of a 7 or an 8. But this seems to be the math here. It's going to be different everywhere. But they accumulate stuff, houses, duplexes, fourplexes. Their biggest asset was a 15-unit building that I ended up buying from them on a contract. And they took the rents and they snowballed down the debt. And now it's like a 5 cap, right? It's a 5% dividend on the value. So that they just started getting about a 5% per year cash flow. And so if you reverse engineer the math, you just take whatever you want, divide by 0.05. And that was the average for this market. It is crazy to see how hands-off you can be in that model. I don't know that that's what everybody wants to do, going completely debt-free. I know Emily and I talked about that a week ago. You could go debt-free almost if that's what you choose to do. Then you'd be retired from the agent biz, or you could.
Do you see that in your near future, Emily? Retirement, or do you see that as something that's coming on later on?
We were talking about stair-stepping it. Well, this is kind of the way I'm seeing it, stair-stepping it a little bit, as far as almost, and this is the best way I can describe it, like, like getting to a point and then, okay, I want to get to this different tier of income. So me and Cody had talked about, rather than, because in my area, I mean, I know we have these calls and Cody talks about, hey, I'm buying this apartment complex. Hey, I'm buying this. We don't have a lot of stuff like that here. I mean, every once in a while, something will come up. So he was like, maybe you pay your stuff off with these flips you're doing in the next year. You get to a certain tier of income, which is like a comfortable number to fully replace what you're paying yourself out of your S corp as an agent. And then you move forward with whatever your next steps are. But then you have that income that replaces because I have a certain amount I pay myself out of my real estate brokerage every month. Well, we pay me, my husband, stuff like that. And that would replace that if I paid off some of my properties, which we've had. Most of our properties are on 15 and 20-year notes. So we could, if we really buckle down and flip for the next year, pay most of those off. But then I would have like no cash, but I would have that income. And so it's kind of like, I thought, do I do that halfway, pay part of them off? Then that income's not quite there, but it's like 75% there. And then like drag it out a little bit. But that was something that we discussed as a potential option. And then like just moving forward, my thought would be I would then borrow against, which I'm doing anyway, because I have a good amount of equity in those rentals. I would just have like 100% equity, and then I could borrow against them to, scale up whatever direction I went next.
But the cool thing is you have the pieces
Emily,
to get it. Oh, go ahead, Gus.
No, go ahead, Cody.
I was just saying you have the pieces to get more than enough cash flow to not have to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. That was a cool takeaway for me to see after that discussion. Like you have everything you need to go from where you're at to not having to show homes if you don't want to show homes. Great spot to be. Yes.
I was going to ask about paying your properties off. Wouldn't that go against, especially if you're still selling homes? Wouldn't that work against you to a degree because now you don't have um, the interest that you're paying on those to compensate the amount of money you coming from sales and things along those lines? Now, I'm not saying I'm a tax expert, but having debt on your properties does help when you're, doing your overall taxes, I would assume.
Yeah, I think if you really look at it, and I am not a tax expert either. I'm not giving tax advice and this could be wrong. But for example, I was looking at some of my amortization schedules on some of my properties that have really low interest rates, which is great. And you think, okay, I don't want to give up this interest rate. But one thing, I'm going to go two directions with this. One thing Cody mentioned is what you could be doing with that money in one place versus another place. Cause I'm not going to pay them off and stop, right? It would be, then I would then borrow against them. And then that would be something that I could deduct because you don't get taxed on, debt, right? So I would do lines of credit and then I would invest that money. But the other thing too is the interest I'm deducting, it's really not a whole, on some of them, like some of these properties I had during the times when interest rates were really good. And so it's like maybe a 3% interest rate. The amount I'm deducting annually, especially because these have been amortized over 15, 20 years, and some of them I'm 13 years in, the principal and interest, the interest I'm deducting is not a whole lot. I'm still getting the depreciation because I'm within that time period. So I still get that tax benefit, but the interest is not that great. Now I could see you saying, don't give up that interest rate for another interest rate. But I also think like if I'm so close to paying a couple of them off and I paid them off and then I went and did something else with that money, if I could make enough more to offset that money just sitting there, that because again, it would be like I get to this platform and then I do something else. Like, so that money still has velocity. I'm just doing something a little bit different than waiting till they're paid off. I'm just doing those last 5 to 7 years quicker. I don't know if that's right, but that's just kind of the way as I've thought through this, have looked at it.
And something we had talked about, which is unique to Emily's position, and some people may be in this position too. She brought up it feels like golden handcuffs because she has a few mortgages that are at 3 and whatever percent, which is amazing. But she also doesn't have the financial freedom that she wants right now. It's all relative to your situation. You could be in someone else's goal and want to get somewhere else. So if she paid those off, you would have enough to live on based on what we discussed. Like there would be more than enough free cash flow. So it's like, you got to pick what you want. Do you want to be golden handcuffed with a small mortgage at 3%? Or do you want to have the freedom to say no on the weekends or on a Friday night? And you can do both. So that's cool. Craig said paying interest to avoid taxes is bad math. I agree. But it is nice if you have to borrow money. It is nice to write it off.
Just want to post this. I think Josh got to go back home, right? I think I saw his post that they were able to go back to their property from the fires.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's really smoky where I live. I can't imagine what it's like over there.
Where is he located?
Spokane. It's Eastern Washington. It's right on the border of Washington and Idaho. So as far as once you do the math to get to retirement, what would be your guys' strategy starting over? How would you maybe cutting expenses or growing income or getting a property, or what would you guys do as your first few steps to go from ground zero to getting closer to that financial freedom number or trying to get to retirement early? Let's say you're 40 years old. You don't want to retire at 65. You want to find a path to retire at 55. What are you doing? Let's assume you have a job. You're not going into further and further into debt every month. You can survive, but You have a 15-year horizon.
And am I in real estate?
You are you, but you don't have real estate right now. You're just working a job. You know what you know. Like, what would you do? Because there's going to be people watching this trying to get advice from us, right? And they want to know what we know, but they may not. And so, like, what would you do given
Before
that situation?
we each go into this, I'm going to put this question up because I don't want to get too far and lose it. And I'm going to ask Cody first because he's our numbers guy. If you are living comfortably on $6K a month, dual income, no kids, what do you think the cash flow would need to be for retirement?
If that $6,000 a month is saving for retirement, you can take that piece off. I learned that from Dion. You don't have to save for retirement when you're retired. So that's cool. I'd say if you're living on 6, I'd shoot for 10. So that's 120 grand a year. You need $2.4 million paying you 5%. In my market, I can buy C+ apartments for 100 grand a door, or that's what they're worth when they're stabilized right now anyway. So that would mean I need a 24 unit portfolio paid off, or a 48 unit portfolio at 50% leverage. That's the way I think about it.
What do you think, Gus?
I think it depends on who the person is, though. I think that plays a big determining factor. You know, I don't want to go out there and shoot a number on, and for all I know, he's the biggest subscriber. Not James, but just someone in general, the biggest subscriber of OnlyFans, and their OnlyFans bill is like $3,000 a month. You know what I mean? So I think better than us telling the people some type of math equation for you to figure out what is the best, what would be a good number for you for how you live in your spending habits. Because if I just say a number, what does that really mean at the end of the day? That's just my perception, and I don't really know who the person is.
Well, for this person, the OnlyFans budget is factored into the 6K, so they're living comfortably on 6K a month.
Then why, you know, I don't know. I really don't have a definitive answer for them. I'll just be making stuff up if I was going to go ahead and say it.
If it makes you feel better, 100% of numbers are made up.
Not your mortgage bill. When that comes through, that's what you got to pay. But that's what you got to pay.
Oh,
that's a fact.
Of course.
That's something that came up with facts, and then you got to pay it. So nothing of it is made up.
Yeah, but my point is, if you don't want that mortgage bill, you don't have to go get the mortgage, right? Like you get to pick your reality for the most part. Like you're gonna have some set costs, but you pick what you want in retirement.
But then that goes back to knowing who you are. So if I'm answering for myself, does this mortgage bill make sense for me to go ahead and take this mortgage and pay it every month? And what are my returns that come along with it? You know, two different things.
So if someone
that me else to live, they can live off of. I don't think that makes sense on my end, unless I know that person more on a one-on-one basis and I can ask them questions that make sense to them.
All right.
I would just say factor in things like, so if you have you're comfortably living off 6K. I don't necessarily have a number, but I just have thoughts to consider. Is your house paid off that you live in, or is it not paid off? If you have rentals, are they paid off? Or are they not paid off? Are they close to being paid off? Because if you're making 6K off a paid off rental or paid off rentals, it's only going to go up what inflation goes up, or if you can value add. If you're making 6K, but you have 2 or 3 more rentals that aren't paid off, your income is going to go up once those are paid off. So like Cody had talked about, are you 100% paid off? Are you 50% leverage? There's a place where that's going to increase. Are you making 6K a month, living comfortably, and you're 70? or are you 40? Because you know, if you're 40, probably you have a lot more life to live and things are going to go up. We can count on inflation. So those are just kind of things that I would consider, is what are those variables that I would anticipate to change either in my favor or against my favor as I think about if I need that number to increase or if I have the potential for it to increase.
There was a message, I think Craig wrote a comment, and he said something about inflation. I think it was towards the beginning.
I'll go look for it.
Oh, you also need a way of beating inflation.
So, we're talking about like these fixed numbers. How does inflation and price costs, go against those particular numbers that we come off that we want to live off of? Because someone might say 5,000 today, but 5,000 today compared to 5,000 3 years ago is a difference between the two. So with that fixed number, how true is that fixed number as time goes on?
It would depend on what asset you're in, because in some assets that's not a fixed number. Like Emily was mentioning, it can go up. Rents can go up. Gus, you're going to make a great politician. Like, I imagine your rents go up, right? So over time, even though your cost basis will go up a little bit, rents seem to outpace, over the long term, they seem to outpace the expense growth. It's just a bigger number. So if expenses go up a percentage and rents go up a percentage, like you're getting more and more rent because it's a higher number than the expense ratio.
Yeah, I think it just depends where that income's coming from. Because if you have a fixed annuity and it doesn't go up, but your expenses go up, and you rent, your rent goes up, your insurance goes up, your taxes go up. So I think we all like real estate because it helps you keep up with inflation. And even if you have money in the stock market, if you leave it in there, that should help you a little bit too, depending on where you're at in the cycle. But if you have something fixed, that's where you're kind of in more trouble.
I got another question that popped up in my head. I'm going to ask Cody it. Where you're at, I think I heard you speak on Zuber's podcast where you said that I think the next step for you is you're going to want to add kids to the household. I think I heard you say that. How do you think that's going to change for you as far as the things that you have set up so far, as far as the money you're allotting yourself from your overall portfolio as time goes on?
Yeah, well, we're going to start really enjoying what we've built pretty soon. When we have kids, the money that the assets are producing is going to go to us. We'll still upkeep the assets, of course, but when I have extra money, I either put it into debt or I throw it into an asset just because I can. There's nowhere to put it other than debt and upgrades. And so, like, I'll show you an example and then I'll go back to your question. Texting with my handyman, I have the shower here. It's a tile shower. Oh, that's not going to show. Let's try again. So, really? Technology is hard. So that's the shower, right? It's a tile shower. I'm going in and putting this in instead. It's a 5-foot wide shower set, plastic surround. Do I have to do that? No, but it's going to make the asset a heck of a lot nicer in that unit. Kitchen's already done. So let's just do the bathroom now. And when we have kids, rather than doing the unnecessary upgrades because I can, we're just going to pay ourselves more. Because that's what it's for. But in the meantime, since I don't have kids, and the soonest it could possibly happen is in theory 9 months out, right? I'm just gonna throw the money into the deal. Because if I can put to do that shower, right, that's gonna cost me $2,500 to do that and redo the plumbing in the wall. The $2,500 might net me another $50 a month, So it's a 4-year payback, and then it's free. So that's how I look at it. It's like, might as well, because I can. But yeah, to your point, when that happens, I'm living it up because I worked really hard to get here.
100%. No, I'm not saying, I'm not critiquing anything that you're doing. I just heard that, and since we're talking about this, I wanted to ask you that question on, you know, how does that look like for you in the future? But you're definitely in a great spot. I wish I was in your spot when I was your age.
Well, you see the good stuff.
Be able to live it up.
I think I told Emily some of the obligations. I don't remember if I told you on that call the obligations I'm coming over, but there's a lot of stuff that comes with building a business like this that is incredibly hard. As every stride in business is going to be difficult. So the good stuff is good, and the hard stuff is really freaking hard right now. So bless you.
Was that a sneeze or a cough?
But yeah, I do want to turn on the cash flow switch and live it up at that point in time. Just 2028. I can see the AI images now. There's going to be the Gus bus in the background, and yeah, I know what Mark's doing. If he sends it to me, I'll show it on live. You guys have anything else you want to discuss today on retirement?
Well, yeah, we didn't even get to the question that you had posed. I just wanted to get to the questions in the chat. So you had said if somebody was 40 years old, they had a 15-year horizon. So what are your parameters? They have a job, so they're not like starting in a big hole. They're kind of a basic middle-class person. Like what would the plan be? We can go back to that. Yeah,
let's do it. And my first thought would be do a budget. I didn't do a budget till I got married. I was always focused on make more money. And then I realized if you track your expenses, you save more. So I would start with a budget, knowing what I know now. After a budget, what would you guys do?
I think the value is time. So if I'm working for 8 hours of the day, let's say it takes an hour for me to get there and back, maybe 2 hours to myself, 6 hours to clean. So what's that, 15 hours? No, 6 hours to sleep. I'm sorry, 6 hours to sleep. That's 15 hours out of a 24-hour day. That leaves me roughly 9 hours. Well, we even call it 7. That's 7 hours for me to go ahead and do something productive that may not cost a lot. And to me, something that I see that's of value is wholesaling to get you going. I think wholesaling is a thing that you could do across the country. Now, don't get me wrong, some wholesalers are a lot better than other wholesalers, but there's also wholesalers that make good deals and they create their own spreads. And I know I'm a real estate agent, I should be saying that more than a wholesaler, but when you're a wholesaler, you could do the whole country. Of course, you want to narrow down an area and pinpoint those particular areas, but I think it just leaves it open and it's affordable to do. Do you have to buy some softwares, things along those lines? Yes. But some of the gaps I'm seeing that these guys are making, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, those are significant numbers to be able to go ahead and put, 5 to 7 hours in each particular day. So for me, it would be try to create active money through the wholesaling avenue. On top of that, what I would put in, just how somewhat way Cody got into the game, and if you can master this, that would be another good starting point, is figuring out how to structure a deal with you putting in none or the least amount of money into it. I think if someone's starting now at those particular ages, I think those are the top tier, in my own opinion, the top tier ways to go about it. There's also the slow ways to go about it. You buy your 4-plex, you buy your 3-plex, things along those lines. But if you really want to try to rev it up at the beginning, my suggestion, my answer would be wholesaling and creative financing, those two things.
Do you think right now in this market, and I'm not very familiar with wholesaling, and there's not a lot of people that successfully wholesale in my market right now in the current market being, I feel like being tougher. I think we're not seeing the same spreads. I don't know. Are you seeing wholesalers being as successful as they were a couple years ago? Are they having to put in more effort? What differences are you seeing for somebody who is or wanting to wholesale like in your area?
So wholesaling is fairly new to our area. It came in within the last 2 years. I would say in the last year, a lot of people have come up here and started to do it. I think opportunities are harder to find, but the opportunities are still out there. And one of the key things I said is you could do this throughout the country. So how many people, how many 70-year-old ladies are looking to transition and get out of their position that they're in? If you're the first person to reach to them and are able to convince them and come up with a plan, that's money that you're going to be making. So I think it's extremely hard, but I think there's opportunities that are still out there. It depends on how hungry you are at the end of the day for making those opportunities work, is how I would put it. Because Emily, we could sit here and say being a real estate agent is it's hard now, but there's still people. Look at you're selling left and right. There's still people selling homes at the end of the day. So just because things have gone down doesn't mean those opportunities don't exist. It's just you have to work extremely harder for those opportunities to flourish.
Cool. I don't know if I actually done a wholesale. I might have done one ever. Those people work so hard. Like they do the dialer system, and I have a few buddies that do wholesale, and they make so much earned income. However, they're working all the time. So that's definitely going to be a job. And there's a lot of restrictions in certain states. Do you guys have that where you're at?
In my state, not yet, but I know it's coming. My brother-in-law's he owns a couple title companies throughout the state. He said he hates wholesalers with a passion. Maybe I shouldn't say stuff like that, but the title companies around here don't like wholesalers. So there's like this 2 companies that the wholesalers use because they're the only ones that are educated on how it works. Everyone else hates it with a passion. A story I heard is there was a particular deal. They worked 75 hours. So not working on the normal bank closings that they know are going to close. They were working on this particular deal for it to fall apart at the last minute, and everyone just throw their hands in the air like it's done. So they're saying it's a lot consuming of time and wasting of money when they're doing wholesale deals because they fall apart fairly quick.
That they do.
Well, and I think when I hear the title companies here talk about when it does happen, or agents, every once in a while we'll talk about one. I think there's a concern, especially from the title companies, about the ethics of it. And, does this little old lady who needs to sell her house understand that if she would have just listed it, she could have made $70,000 more? And I think there's a predatory aspect to it. And so I think the title companies are worried about the liability there. I think that I've heard certain times where, and this is just through the grapevine, not deals I've been involved with, so this might not be 100% accurate, that they want some sort of guarantee that the original seller is aware of the profit that the other person is making, and that needs to be disclosed, and just making sure they're covering, because how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like it's predatory? Do you feel like it can be predatory? Where do you feel like the line is from business to predatory when you look at the practice?
I mean, I've definitely shared thoughts on this years ago. I stepped away from that field a while ago, but I mean, I feel like any business can be viewed as predatory. Like, oh, I'm going to go buy this apartment building and raise the rent $300 on this poor person that can't move. It's cheaper to pay $300 than it is to move. That could be predatory too, right? Like, you're just looking for opportunities. It's just who's holding the bag at the end of the day. But from the wholesaler's perspective, I mean, some people have a great deal. This is where I think it goes too far. Like, let's say it's worth 100 as is. That's what you're selling it for to someone. And then you have it under contract at 80, and then you beat them up pre-close to 70. You have a good deal, and then you take it even further just so you can make more money. I think that's definitely pushing it. And people do that all the time, which is obnoxious. You're just taking from the elderly to, like, there's so many rules and regulations now in Washington because people were doing that and abusing it and just taking money out of the pockets of the elderly and putting it into theirs. So, I mean, there's a fine line. If you're providing a service, you should get compensated. But I saw a wholesale fee of $200,000. That's a lot of money, right? And it doesn't even matter what asset it is. Like that, I think that one was a house. Like 200 grand. You didn't provide $200,000 worth of value. So there's definitely crossing the line.
I think what we're not factoring in is the human element of how humans are in general. When I say that is, like, say in the jungle, there might be, I don't know what kind of animal, a gazelle. He was the strongest gazelle for quite some time. As that gazelle gets older and slower, there's going to be a young lion that's going to go ahead and catch that gazelle, and it's over for that gazelle. I think business, as bad as this is going to sound, is the same way. If you're not in tune of what's going on and keeping up with everything that's going on, the results are going to be someone younger and hungrier is looking to go ahead and take something away from you. And that's just, facts of life. When I was at the peak of being an agent, there was a whole bunch of other agents. I only looked at, oh, they're newbies, da 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 da. Now they're at the top, and I'm barely doing transactions. Someone's always coming, and they're coming to take what's off your plate. So is it ethical? It's questionable, because if I talk to someone on the phone and they sign the documentations, what did I do wrong at the end of the day? I didn't do anything. I explained everything. Everything's there in writing. They decided to go ahead and sign the contract at the end of the day. As messed up as that sounds, keeping yourself sharp, understanding, don't trust everyone. This world is wicked. Sometimes we're in our own bubbles. We don't meet the people that are these wicked people, but there's a bunch of them out there. So not only you have to look out for the people that you're coming in contact with, but you also have to stay sharp on what you're doing, no matter how old you get, because it's never going to stop. The older you get, the more you become a target. And I mean that in all due respect when I say I'm just putting a realistic touch to it.
But I also feel like we have to hold ourselves accountable in how we treat other people. I mean, I've never done any sort of wholesaling, but even as an agent or as an investor, I'll have people come to me and say, hey, I know you buy houses. This is what I want for this property, or would you do this? And literally, every time I have told somebody, listen, even if we list your house and you pay me a commission, you'll still make this much more, or I can buy it. It will be fast. It will be as is. You're not going to have the stress, but it's going to be this much less. Every single time I've told someone the reality of the numbers, except for one that I have under contract right now, because their priority was convenience, not numbers, they have always elected to list it because they have the full story. And so, like, I can sleep at night, and I have a good reputation in my community because when you send your grandma to me, I'm not going to snatch her soul out of her body, And so, like, I think there's a point where now if I tell you, hey, I'm going to make a profit on this, it's for a business, this is where I'm at. But if your little old grandma doesn't know what her house is worth because she bought it for $20 in a pack of cigarettes 75 years ago, and I make 80 grand off of her, like, I'm not sleeping because of that, And so, like, I also think we have a responsibility to not be horrendous people as well. Now, there are people that are predatory, so we do want to look out for our elderly family members and our elderly neighbors. I just don't want to be one of those people ever that's how I do my business. And that's why I just don't love, again, I think there's margins. I get the wholesalers do the work, but there's a point where it's predatory and you're taking advantage of somebody who just doesn't know. And yes, they should know, but as we see elderly people get taken advantage of more and more, they just don't.
But Emily, I would say you're a good person at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And how many good people are there at the end of the day? And I'm sure you guys talk to quite a bit of people. How many can you look at and say, yo, this is a good person? I'll be surprised if it's over 30%, 40%. That would just be my thinking.
But that's why I ask about your thoughts on wholesale. Like, I get the way the world is, and I agree with you. Like, I think most people are not good, but I also would challenge the people I come in contact with and the investors that learn something from me. Like, there is a way to be successful and not screw people up. Like, you can do both. And so for me, like, I don't want that extra 40 grand if it means taking the last 40 grand that lady could have had to pay for whatever care she needs at the end of her life. You know what I mean? Like, and so there are people that are predatory, but the way I operate, I've not seen much wholesaling that I feel like is it's not that you don't deserve to get paid for what you do, but there's a point where that person doesn't understand what their property is worth. And I'll tell you, like, even when my grandma died, my parents and my family was working on cleaning out her house. She had a really nice house in a nice area, but she was a hoarder. And there were people that, like, one of the neighbors came to my dad and he was like, oh yeah, let's just do it without a realtor. We'll buy it from you. Cause I think they wanted it for a family member. Houses in this area go for about 400,000. We'd give you close to that, but since it needs work, maybe we'd be a little bit lower and you'll save money because we won't pay a realtor. And my dad was like, well, my daughter's a realtor, so she'll deal with it. That house sold for like $595,000. And somebody was trying to make him feel like he'd save money if he didn't get a realtor and buy it for 4 something. And if he would have just listened to that and not known, you know what I mean? Like, so again, yes, there's people doing it. I just am not going to be the type of person who does that to somebody.
The other problem is there's a lot of newbies getting into the business and they don't understand why it's wrong because they bought a course that's saying you can make all this money. And so they're thinking, I can make all this money. They haven't been in business long enough to see the other side. That's the other problem. So they're just in it to make a quick buck and they're not thinking, would I feel good if this was my grandpa or my grandma that I'm buying from? They're just thinking, well, this is what other people are doing. So this is a paycheck. And they're just negotiating the best deal they can so they can put the most money in their account. But there's no way they could understand what they're doing because they haven't been in the business long enough.
Especially if they're not making significant amount of money. $5,000 off of one transaction to someone who's never barely ever made $5,000, that's a lot of money to them.
It's a lot of money in general. You can do a lot with $5,000.
I would argue that there's a reasonable fee for your service, right? Just like as a realtor, I can charge what I charge, but like it would not be fair for me to charge 20%. And so as a wholesaler, rules, laws, whatever aside, you're almost brokering that transaction. And so you're doing a service for a fee. But if, like Cody was saying, if somebody on a house, not like a multi-unit complex, if somebody on a house is making a $20,000 or $200,000 delta because there was so much skin in the deal that the person selling wasn't aware of, is there not an ethical constraint to say, hold on, like, you know, like, again, I'm brokering this, maybe 20,000's fair, depending on the price, maybe 5,000's fair, depending on the price, whatever. But there is a delta that is just, it becomes a problem in my mind.
Yeah, I saw a land deal that was also around that margin. My buddy locked it up for 8 and sold it for $1 million. I don't feel as bad on that because it's not like someone's house, but locking up for 800 grand and wholesaling it for $1 million, it's kind of that's a big delta. 25% markup.
Emily, and I also think, you know, all three of us, because we're all agents, we're coming from the agent perspective of things. These people don't have your name got to be squeaky clean for you to get deals and for other agents to want to go ahead and do business with you and clients who are giving you your home to sell. We have to move a certain way. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of the people who stay in the game as agents, they tend to be good people at the end of the day because there's rules and regulations that come with it. If you're getting into a game where there's not much rules and regulations and it's like the Wild Wild West, I think they're not coming in with the same mentality that you're speaking of. I think in coming in contact with a 70-year-old lady who they can convince. Now, once again, I'm not saying I do this because I don't do this. So what I am shedding light on is what actually is going on with wholesalers, and me talking with them and figuring out exactly, you know, what they do and how they make their money. They're preying on people who haven't kept up with real estate, and that's just it.
It goes just along the lines too of, I have a friend who's a plumber, and we were talking about different contractors in town who charge rates that are really just unreasonable for this. Like there's, okay, I'm really good. I charge a little bit higher than maybe the other contractors or subcontractors. And then there's some rates that are just crazy unreasonable. And I was talking, this was actually years ago, to one of my friends that's a plumber. And he was just like, you know what, if I was out of town and my wife or my mom or somebody in my family had to call a plumber or a service technician, again, I have to charge for my work, but I want to treat people like I would want people to treat, you know, my wife or my mom or my grandma. And I think like we need to think about that when we're operating in the world and how we treat people.
On that, I would recommend you read Deals on Wheels by Lonnie Scruggs. Great read. One of the first creative finance books I ever read. One of the only creative finance books I've ever read. And it seems like the books are getting ruined and destroyed because the price goes up every year. It used to be $100. Now I think it's $400 to get that book. So it keeps going up, which is interesting. That said, that is the topic of the book. You buy the Deals on Wheels. You're buying cheap mobile homes in a park for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 cash. You can find deals like this even today. And then you turn around and you list it with owner financing on Marketplace. Let's say you buy it for $5,000 cash. The idea is you sell it on a contract for 15. You finance the tenant with 20% down, which is $3,000. You got 3 of your 5 back. You have $2,000 left in the deal. And now you're getting payments on a $12,000 note. So your $2,000 of cash at that point is backed by a $12,000 note at 10% interest. And you think that's a lot of interest. Well, it's on a $12,000 note. So it's $100 a month of interest. It's not a big deal. So then you just have these contract payments and you can recycle your money very quickly doing that. There's a lot of opportunities like that.
There's some guys in Louisiana I know that do that method. Is it called lease to own option or something like that?
The strategy?
Yeah, there's a title to it, isn't it? Like a lease to own option or
a lease option
or
or a real estate contract or you can do a promissory note. Like there's different ways to do it. I
think it's, from what they explained to me, I think it's pretty solid if that's your lane of things and how you want to go about it. And especially if you are able to find a good niche of people, you know, that can't buy homes regular through government funding. I think it's a good thing, especially if the prices are low like this. You can make some coin and you're getting a large lump sum on your money with the down payment. So, and if worse comes worse, you get the property back and then you could just do it again.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, that it's a small enough dollar amount where you could throw it on a 0 interest credit card and pay off the credit card with the cash you get back and the monthly cash flow. Just depends how quickly it takes you to sell it. But you get a 15-month 0 interest card. You literally pay cash for the thing with no interest.
And then I think there's another thing I was going to bring. Oh, they take, if something happens within the home, they have to fix it. So it's like they take care of everything, I believe. The taxes, insurance, and all that. It's on the person who is on the opposite side.
Yeah, because you're just the bank, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty. Actually, the more I thought about it when this person was explaining it to me, I thought it was pretty dope. So I tried to attempt it up here, and then we went over budget with the rehab. So I was like, I was like, you know what, fuck this, let's just sell it. And that's how I went about it. But yeah, I think that model is pretty good if you're in the right area. And the guy who I spoke to said what he has is a lot of Hispanics. They'll move in with like 10, 15 people, and each one he buys, they move in. One family settles in the one that they end up paying off, and they'll move into the next one that he does. Like the remaining family moves into the next one. So what they're doing is like moving house to house to house. To each family has their own place. I was like, man, you got the pipeline, you got the setup. It makes sense to me.
That's awesome. Do you guys have anything else you want to share here? We talked about wholesaling. I think if I was starting over, I'd jump into the house hack for sure. It's a sacrifice. Maybe your partner doesn't want to do it, but if you want to get ahead and retire in 15 years, it doesn't really matter what you want to do at this point, because you do it now or you're going to do it when you're 55. You're going to sacrifice somewhere. So I would absolutely house hack. And then one thing I would do different rather than scaling a crazy portfolio, I would look for either A, flips, or B, BRRRR deals where I can rip money out above cost basis and then pay off the house hack. And I would try and get 2 house hacks essentially paid off before I go buy a house. That would be my game plan, basically, if I started over today.
And I think if you live in an area where there's small multifamilies available, if you could house hack to house, like if you could do triplex, fourplex several times, how many properties you could get under your belt with, low down payments, and then work on them and make them nicer. Or the other thing too is if you could renovate properties, again, something that was financeable, something that was livable, but you could add value and improve. If you lived in a house, fixed it up, 2.5 years, owner occupant, sell it, 2.5 years, owner occupant, sell it, 2.5 years, owner occupant, sell it, you're not paying cap, depending on the gain, obviously $250 for a single person, $500 for a married couple. You could potentially be selling and just, I know people that have done that over their lives, just kind of put that on repeat, and they're making these gains that they're not paying taxes on, and they're basically living tax-free plus that profit, or tax, or living without rent, because at the end they have the profit and then they're not paying taxes on that gain. That's a good option too, if you don't necessarily want to share doors, but you could fix it up and sell it every 2.5 years.
Cody, are you giving that advice to people in general? Because I thought the question was, with the skills and knowledge that we have now, what would be the things that we do? So are you telling me you would much rather go through that avenue compared to
that's what I would do.
Still try to create a financing deals together from the get-go with the knowledge that you already have?
I would try and house hack. That would be the first buy that I do. And here's the reason. I did buy a deal creatively, 0 money down, and my BRRRR, my cash out above cost basis, where it still cash flows, was $600,000. That's a lot of money, right? For most people. If I got accustomed to only looking for deals like that, because that was my first deal, that was my 4th deal. But I'm just saying, if I did a deal like that today, knowing what I know, and that was my first deal, as someone else, all they're going to do is look for deals like that, and they're going to miss the good ones that are smaller. So what I would do is I would house hack first, and then I'd go look for deals like that, either that I can burn, pull money out above cost basis, or that I can flip, take the money, and I would pay off the house hack. Because that $600,000, I paid $680 for a 12-plex. If I hadn't pulled a bunch of money out of it over the last few years to expand, which is part of the mistakes that I made, I could have had it just paid off. Would have been done, free and clear today. So yeah, I would start with a house hack, whether it's a 4-plex, duplex, triplex, whatever it may be. And then I'd try and do deals to generate liquidity to pay it off. And then I'd do it again. And you get a few of those properties paid off. Yeah, if a creative deal comes up, I'd absolutely do it. But the quickest path to an early retirement is maximizing your net cash flow relative to your outflow. So you have a lot of optionality, not a lot of obligations. And that's what I was mentioning to Emily when we were discussing her pieces. Could you keep levering up and scaling? Yes. And could you do creative finance deals? Yes. But also, if you can achieve it, do it, and then you can take it or leave it, right? Achieve the freedom, maximum amount of cash flow, least amount of obligations. And that's why I would house hack and then try and pay it off with other deals. Because now I have the true freedom and I can change it if I don't like it.
Also, Cody, I got a live later today with your boy Brady. Is there anything that you want me to bring up or ask him on that particular live?
I don't see a point. He doesn't understand why the math works the way it does. And I keep getting comments. I sent you guys a comment on my YouTube. A landlord of 20 years, right? Commented, I can't believe that he just expects to use reserves and not have any cash flow. I sent it to you and Mark, right? Like the people that have been doing this for a long time, I keep getting that in my very small channel, getting comments about it. It's like it doesn't even matter. He's going to do his thing. I'm not here to change his mind.
Okay.
If you guys were starting today, how would you set up your structure, like trust, LLC, etc.?
That would not be the first thing I focus on. I think I started a trust after like 5 years. Once I had assets. And if I was house hacking that model, I just owned it in my name because it's what you do if you house hack typically. So that wouldn't be my first thing I look at. But after I get some assets, then yeah, I would spend some of the cash flow and hire a great attorney and have them set it all up.
I think, Emily, it's when we were on that podcast with the lady with the blonde hair. I forgot her name. The one that was so interesting. She said, why is that the first thing that people tend to think about is like a LLC? And this is where I do agree with her. You got to have something to even think about having an LLC. So the main focus is finding what Cody said, is finding the assets first. Let's get assets, and then we could talk about what comes after that. Let's focus on the underwriting first, then get asset, then talk about, LLC, trust, and all the things that come along with that. Let's put things in priority. That makes sense.
I think that's one of the things where people start doing research and they get in communities and they kind of that analysis paralysis thing. All of people call me that want to get into real estate. Oh, I have my LLC. I have this. They have everything set up and they haven't even, and then they're like, oh, with the loan I'm doing, I can't even buy in an LLC. So I think that's one thing for people to think about. You're going to get much more favorable loans, especially if you're starting, if you just buy them in your name. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not giving tax advice. I just know that I have seen people get LLCs and their lenders are like, nope, you need to buy this in your personal name. And so when you're getting started, and like Cody said, especially if we're talking about a house hack, you're going to be an owner occupant of a fourplex, triplex, duplex. You probably just need to start and then look at adjusting that. That's not legal advice as far as liability, but for the type of loan you want to get, you're probably going to start as in your primary name.
Hey, Cody, I want to ask you a question while I still got you on here. Have you ever had, either you or a friend that you know, ever had where a bank called a note because they did some type of subject to or anything along those lines? Because I've never heard of them. Doesn't mean that they don't exist. I've just never spoken to anyone that said they ran into that type of situation. Or Emily, you too.
My circle doesn't do that stuff for the most part. So it's not super relevant in like the assets that I'm dealing with. I'm not buying houses, and people typically aren't doing subject to in like the apartment building space. You can do it. There's a reason to do it. But there's also better ways to do it in that space. And it's just, I'm sure people are doing it somewhere. There's just not a lot of people doing that here. There's no reason to.
Emily, have you heard of anyone where the bank has called the note?
I've never heard of it happening, but as I hear people speaking of this, we always hear about almost all these, normal mortgages have an acceleration clause where they can call it if you breach. And so I don't think that they probably want to at a huge scale call a bunch of mortgages as more people are doing this. But when I think about all these people preaching subject to, again, when I think of the predatory nature, not thinking of the other side, what risk are we exposing these sellers to whose names are on the original note? And is this mortgage fraud if we're doing this and not reporting it? I mean, I think there's a lot of gray areas. So no, I haven't heard of it, but it could happen. I'm sure there's a clause in there that says they can't be doing what they're doing.
Oh, okay. Just wondering.
Cool. Well, we went over an hour, so that's awesome. Yeah, hit the like button. Do the thing.
All right. Anything else you guys want to add?
I'd say for just because it's the topic of the video, retirement, something that I am doing to really become more hands off is I'm paying off. I'm going to pay off some of the smaller properties. So I'm not just doing that out of, I'm not taking my cash reserves and just hammering the debt. I'm doing a bird deal, and then I'll pull cash out above cost basis, make the new rents that I don't have right now, pay for it, and then take that cash and throw it at a mortgage. I believe that there's some good value in having stuff paid off. One other piece that we didn't really touch on today, something my wife and I are building, is our fixed benefit retirement plan. So we've got the growth, so we have a lot of assets that are positioned for growth, but we're going to do some lower return fixed benefit stuff. Example, selling stuff on a real estate contract, on a promissory note, deed of trust. It's a fixed payment at a fixed interest for a fixed amount of time. We're annuitizing what we've built. So we'll be likely paying off our smaller properties and then just seller financing them 10% down, 15% down to build up these stable contract payments. And then our goal would be to have a fixed payment structure that is twice our cost of living, in addition to the growth stuff. It sacrifices future growth, but it solidifies the base.
Okay. For me, you can't think about retirement if you ain't buying no real estate. So I'm gonna keep mine simple as possible. Stop sitting on the pot. Either you're gonna take a shit or you're gonna get off the pot. Pretty much.
Or doom scroll.
You could do that, but it kind of goes across what I'm saying. Just don't take action. I know it can seem easy for someone like me to say, just go ahead and do it, but it's not the most difficult thing in the world. In my area, we're having a lot of disputes about what's going on locally. And what I'm seeing is a whole bunch of people talking about expenses and prices and things along those lines. I just don't understand how people are not preparing themselves for what's happening. Maybe it doesn't have to be real estate, but it has to be something that you're creating to go ahead and withstand all these expenses increases that are going on around here. So, I just hope people, especially the ones that are watching this, you're watching a real estate platform, go out there, take action. The sooner you do it, the sooner you're putting yourself in a better situation. And that's mine. And then you could talk about retirement way early because you took action.
Nice. Thanks, guys. We'll see everybody on the next one. Thank you for being here. Happy Tuesday, everybody.